So here we go again. I'm going to be debunking Gojo's inaccessible speed for, I think, the third time. But this time around it's going to be a complete video, right? I finally got access back to my 10-minute video, so I can make a 10-minute video. So this is going to be part one. And I may have to do a part two because there's going to be a lot to talk about. So let's get to it. So obviously to debunk Gojo's inaccessible speed, I'm going to have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is Gojo moving in stop time, also known as in zero time. For starters, the first thing that we have to understand is that Gojo isn't showcasing here inaccessible speed in terms of fighting, right? He's just moving a finger. And if you think that he can have inaccessible speed moving a finger, that's fine. But there is zero arguments to be made that this same speed can be applied when it comes to his fighting speed, his running speed, his traveling speed, or even his combat speed altogether. Now, if you guys want to see an actual inaccessible speed feat, I can make a video on it. And this one from Black Clover, where, for example, people like have a spell called Wonderland that actually stops time. And people like Lucius can actually move inside of it. And no, Lucius wasn't using his time hacks. He was just using his own speed. And the Paladins don't even have time hacks, so they can actually still move inside of it. That, for example, would be an inaccessible speed feat because they can actually fight using that speed. It's not they can just move one finger and this would equal running speed, traveling speed, combat speed, and all of that. And there is one reason also why this doesn't actually apply. From an interview with the JJK author where he was actually explaining many things that the prison realm, because, the prison realm had a lot of a lack of information, it was very ambiguous. He said this, he said, while Gojo may appear carefree on the surface, he's actually doing his best to keep his head empty and have no thoughts. If he thinks too much, he's probably going to go insane. And there's actually a reason for this, is because the prison realm has one purpose, to make people go insane so that they actually unalive themselves. And here's why. Gege Resolve revealed that, has anyone been trapped in the prison realm before? He says, yes, there was. Essentially, the prison realm can only have one person at a time, and he can't have another person trapped inside until that person kills himself or opens the gate to escape. So yes, this means that the purpose of the box is to drive you insane so that you actually, unalive yourself. That's the reason why Gojo isn't thinking a lot, because the more he's thinking about it, the more likely he's going to go insane and just kill himself. Now you may say, how does that actually all tie back to the fact that he cannot use his speed for combat? And well, it actually does make a lot of sense. Because when you're fighting, you have to think a lot. You have to have your reaction speed, therefore you have to be looking around you, you have to be thinking of strategies. The more when you're fighting, you're naturally thinking of things, unless you have some sort of unconscious fighting like Ultra Instinct, for example, which Gojo just doesn't have. This pretty much confirms that if Gojo tried to fight inside of the box, most likely what would happen is that he will go insane. That's why he's actually not moving and staying still. Therefore, doing the minimal amount of action will require the minimal amount of thinking. That's also the reason why he's actually opening his blindfold and opening one of his eyes, because his eyes give him visual prowess. So yeah, it's not easy to move inside of the box. So no, that doesn't equal to inaccessible speed when it comes to fighting. That is a major problem. So apart from the fact that there is just not a lot of information to go from that he can use this inaccessible speed in fighting or to combat someone, this actually, if anything, there's information why he cannot use it, because, for example, inaccessible speed, which just means moving in stop time. And when it comes to Gojo moving in stop time, he's only showcased the feat where he can just move a finger. And we know why he cannot actually, start running around the place and doing cartwheels inside of the box, because he will go insane and lose his mentality. But that is a mid-tier level debunk. But there's actually much more ways to debunk this that are actually much more concrete, and here's how. Obviously, when applying a speed tier to a character, we also have to see just how consistent this actually gets, because if we have inaccessible speed Gojo, but this gives birth to 10,000 different contradictions within the series, then it doesn't have a lot of validity behind it now, does it? Because if it leads to so many contradictions, then why should we actually use it? Whereas, for example, having massively hypersonic Gojo, however, doesn't lead to contradictions. And here's why inaccessible speed itself actually leads to contradictions. The first one is his fight with Sukuna. Now, if we assume that Gojo has inaccessible speed, then Sukuna should also have inaccessible speed, because yes, throughout the entirety of the fight, Sukuna was able to keep up with Gojo. They were both equally matched. Now, many people like to say that, yeah, but Sukuna has inaccessible speed and he speed blitzed his infinity right here. But that's actually not the case. He didn't speed blitz his infinity here for two main reasons. One, if it was, this would be a very major event, because for the first time, Gojo's infinity would have been speed blitzed by sheer movement. Whereas in reality, so far, when it comes to the limitless ability in the infinity, nobody has able to bypass it with sheer speed. It's always been either anti-curse weapons or domain expansions. This right here looks very similar, or rather exactly the same as domain amplification, which makes a lot of sense. Domain amplification is used to like amplify your attacks, which causes to nullify the attack of the other, like for example, his defenses. So this could have been domain amplification, or something else which is more sorry, I was also what I was about to say. So something that explains this much better is the fact that Gojo deactivated himself, because yes, Gojo can deactivate his own infinity. And he deactivated his infinity to then proceed and actually slam Sukuna through the building. Not to mention, again, if this happened, if he speed bleeds his infinity, this means that he would have presented at least like infinite levels of speed, which is something major that would have happened. Keep in mind, JJK still doesn't even have a light speed feat. And no, tachyons with Hollow Purple don't scale to infinite, to light speed. Tachyons, even in real life, have never been proven to be light speed, if anything. But the other problem is just like the lack of like reaction. Like, yeah, Gojo, like he's not surprised. Like you can even see his mouth, like he's like casually. And no, this is not a shocked eye. This, for example, is a shocked eye, right? Or almost shocked. He's not actually shocked. Right, speed bleeding his infinity will have caused a mass reaction, not to mention that everyone is watching this fight, meaning that pretty much all of the other people, like Itadori and all of his friends, they're all watching this fight. They will have actually mentioned something, because they're doing commentary on the side. If something so important happened, it would have been mentioned, but here it's not mentioned whatsoever. Another major contradiction is like the fact that if Gojo had inaccessible speed, then he should have dodged the like guaranteed hit attacks. Something that's guaranteed to hit you mean that it literally spawns on you and it hits you automatically. That's just the definition of infinite speed. If he had inaccessible speed, he should have been able to dodge it, yet he didn't dodge it. So yeah, that means that he probably doesn't have inaccessible speed. So yeah, these are two very basic ways to debunk it, but I'm going to get to the final way to debunk this, which is by far the best way to debunk anything that has to do with inaccessible speed Gojo. And here it is. If we actually translate this and take a look at all of the information when it comes to the prison realm, we know that it doesn't abide by the laws of time. And when you say it doesn't abide by the laws of time, it is referring to the normal laws of time that exist everywhere around us, right? For example, a normal law of time would be that if time is stopped, then all physical movement is also stopped. And no, this isn't like, I didn't pull this like out of nowhere. It says according to one theory, the subspace inside of the prison is not bound by any laws of time. Now, people are going to use the term theory and say it's a theory, therefore it might not even be correct. But people don't understand that if a theory is backed up by arguments, you're going to need arguments yourself to actually debunk it. Because saying that this is the case just because it's a theory, then yeah, that wouldn't be the case. Like you can just say that, oh, it's a theory, it doesn't have to be true. But if a theory is backed up with arguments, such as the theory of relativity, or for example, many other theories in mathematics, then you're going to have to find counter arguments to debunk it and not just claim it's a theory, therefore it doesn't have to be true. You're going to need arguments, so yeah. Now, you may be asking, where exactly am I going with this? Like, it doesn't abide by the laws of time. Why should that be important? Well, as I explained previously, if it did abide by the laws of time, then stopping time would also stop physical movement. However, the problem is that here I can say that time can be stopped, but what makes people stop in time as well? What if time is stopped, but people are not stopped in time as well? We don't have to find a correlation between the two. Of course, in real, like in the real universe, using the real laws of time, if you stop time, then I'm going to be frozen in time as well. But because it doesn't abide by those laws, it has its own rules. I can just say that time is stopped, but the box just gives the authority to people to move. And you may say that sounds interesting, but it's still a hypothesis, right? Well, there's actually proof that this actually does make a lot of sense and it's logical. Now remember those two things that I said. If he thinks too much, he'll probably go insane. Akutami explained, the author of JJK. And what also does is it say, until that person kills themselves or opens the gate to escape. In other words, as I explained previously in the beginning, the box wants to make you go insane, drive you to madness, so that eventually you take out your life. But here's the problem with this. If time was actually stopped and you were frozen in time, then you wouldn't be able to actually kill yourself. Now you may say, well, you could die of starvation or dehydration, right? Well, that would be actually wrong. A question was asked, it is said that there is no passage of time in the prison realm, but the prisoner doesn't feel hungry. How do they use the bathroom? Here's what Akutami actually answers. Gege Akutami says, since physical time does not flow, eating and defecation does not happen. It doesn't really get a chance to, he doesn't get a chance to talk about it in the manga, but he says that Jujutsu sorcerers have special bugs that are put inside of their stomachs. So not only do they actually have these special bugs that feed them food, etc., but this, even if they didn't have them, in physical time, eating and defecation does not happen. Therefore, they don't actually require like things such as food and water and all of that. Because time is stopped, their functionality of their body is also stopped as well. Their movement does not have to be stopped, but the functionality of their body can be stopped. And again, you may say, but that doesn't make sense. Like, if you're frozen in time, then everything is frozen. Well, no, again, it doesn't have to be that it is. It doesn't abide by those laws of time. It has its own laws of time. So yeah, to put it simply, time may be stopped, but the cube still gives you the possibility to move, because how exactly are you going to kill yourself if you can even move in the first place? And no, you won't die from dehydration or defecation. Like, you won't die because you don't have food. Therefore, the only way to kill yourself is to do it yourself. So yeah, next video is going to talk about more arguments.